Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about solar panels, but from a structural engineering perspective. So the UK government have really high targets for solar power generation, and that means that loads of people are putting solar panels on their buildings. And what that means is they appoint a structural engineer like me to assess their existing building or their existing roof to check that it's safe to put the solar panels onto them. And the reason that I'm making this video is because I get a lot of these requests, and actually it can be a very laborious and long process when I don't get the right information I need to do that structural assessment. So this video should tell you everything that you need to provide to your structural engineer for them to do the roof assessment for the solar panels. Now, you could watch this short video, or you can email us at mail@additivesustainability.com with the title PV panel roof checklist, and we'll provide all of the necessary information that you need to give to your structural engineer in a PDF document. So what the overall process looks like is, before you appoint the structural engineer, you've already spoken to the solar power panel manufacturer, decided what units you're using for the power that you need and where on the roof they're going. So then you appoint the structural engineer, and they will tell you, one, that your roof is in good condition before you start adding things to it, that the structural capacity of your roof is sufficient to mount something onto it, and that your chosen solar panel system is sufficient to resist the wind that's going to be applied to the roof of your building. What is really helpful to do this assessment is any existing information you have of the buildings. Now, that could be existing structural drawings, which it would be really lucky if you have those, but it could also be photos of the existing structure, any reports that have been conducted, or like, for example, a condition report. Some of these documents can have information that make it helpful for a structural engineer to piece together how the building is working. So if you send that along to them, as well as the specification for your chosen solar panels, including the weight of the solar panels, what that mounting system is, and how it connects back to the main structure, that is a really useful place to start. Now, usually the structural engineer will come to site anyway to take a look at the existing building, and it's worth remembering two things before the structural engineer comes to visit. So firstly, if you look up at the roof or the loft and you can't see anything, so there's a ceiling covering all of the structure, then you need to let the engineer know, and they will specify something called opening up works or investigative works, which is basically a little sheet markup of where they want you to get a builder to cut some holes in the ceiling, and it needs to be from the ceiling level and not from the roof above. That's because if there's any waterproofing on the roof above, you don't want to damage it. So they'll schedule these opening up works and make sure that those holes are open before the engineer comes to site, so that they can take a look at them and take all of the required measurements that they need. And number two, if you've got a loft in your house, for example, and you can see the structure, but you need to take a ladder up to actually get up there and take the required measurements, make sure that that access is provided when the engineer comes. I've been to a number of sites where the loft is actually has structure visible, but I've not actually been able to go up there and take the measurements. So I've needed to come home and ask someone else who lives there to actually take the measurements that I need for the assessment, and that's a very inefficient use of time. So what is the information that an engineer needs to know to conduct this assessment? So primarily for the wind calculations, we will need to know the overall building geometry. So that's in plan, and also the height of it. So that's the height of the main building and also the height of the roof if the roof is pitched. And then what we're looking for is the structural members and the build-up. So basically, what material that roof is made up of. Is it timber beams? Is it steel purlins? The dimensions of them, so the width and the depth, the spacing between them, and any additional material that is being supported by that roof structure. So for example, ceiling material and anything that is going on top of the roof. I've also seen roofs in industrial buildings supported by purlins, which are supported on steel beams again. So you'd need to know basically all of the section properties of those purlins and those beams and columns if the beams are supported on columns rather than walls. And I want to add a section here about what happens if the roof fails the assessment. So solar panels are usually quite light. So if the calculations indicate that your roof is insufficient to support the solar panels, it usually means there's an issue with the design of the structure itself. So maybe you have something that's really old and no one did any design calculations for it, or you have something that used to be one type of building and was designed for that and then was converted into something else, but the calculations to justify the conversion weren't necessarily done. And I have seen a few of those in my time. So as a structural engineer, what I can do is I can propose a remedial detail. So sometimes in timber roofs that can be doubling up the joists or replacing some of the joists, and sometimes in steel structures it can be the addition of some of bracing in some of the bays. That has also happened sometimes. So an additional service that the engineer will offer is the remedial solution if your structure doesn't work. So I hope that was useful, and do email us if you'd like to see a checklist of what information a structural engineer needs to do a solar panel assessment. This stuff actually applies for anything. So it applies for any addition of load or any modification of existing structure. You'll kind of need the same information. With solar panels, we usually only check the roofs and not necessarily the entire structure. But if you are adding significant load to a building like an extension, the entire structure will need to be checked down to the foundation, and then similar type of information is required, but it's required not just the roof structure, but all the way down. So yeah, thank you very much. Hope that was useful, and looking forward to seeing more of you add solar panels to your buildings. Bye.